It's a real pleasure to be here today. I started my career in social care, working first of all as a bus escort, bringing older people from the area that I lived in into the day service that was provided for them. And I then reached the dizzy heights of being a care officer. Although I do remember one vivid occasion when a lady called Nellie McMeekin said to me, "Care officer? You're more like a bloody prison officer." So, yeah, I didn't have an illustrious career in aged care, but I did learn to be very good at playing bingo. I can handle 40 tickets at once. So once I realised that the numbers were in sequence, it was a whiz after that. But I'm thinking, did your heart not just sink when you saw the title of my talk, Person-Centred Planning, a New Approach to Assessment? Oh, not another new approach. Yeah. I know in the sector that I'm most familiar with, the disability sector, we are awash with new approaches. And I'm a bit over it, actually, because I don't think that we've done any of the old approaches particularly well. We move on to the next new idea as soon as it gets a bit bumpy. As soon as we get to the point at which we're actually testing our theories out and trying to make something good happen, the first time we stumble, we say, "This is rubbish. What's the next idea?" And so I hesitate in this group to bring you a new approach to assessment. So what I want to talk to you about is assessment, and I want to talk to you more thoroughly, I suppose, about what it means to be person-centred, and to let you make some, or have your own thoughts about whether or not this is likely to be a useful way for you to proceed with your work. I do think it would be, of course I would, but I understand that sort of fatigue of new ideas. You'll be familiar with these modes of assessment. They seem to still be in the textbooks, even although Jerry Smale was thinking and writing about them maybe 20, possibly even 30 years ago. The questioning, and I thought this was a very interesting, you talked about the use of language, Tracy. I thought this was a very interesting way of describing this. When I learned about these models of assessment about 100 years ago, it was described initially as the expert model of assessment, but it's now become, in many of the textbooks, the questioning model, which is, I think, a way of us trying to pretend that we're not experts when we're in that mode of asking people, about what's going on for them. I think it's fine to be an expert. If I want to have my appendix removed, I would really like an expert to do that. If I want to have my hair cut, can I have some expertise around about that? So I think let's not be shy about expertise. If I want a good diagnosis, bring on the expert. What I do worry about with the expert model is that many people stay in expert mode even when they don't have much expertise. They've read a book about something. But there it is, the questioning or the expert model of assessment exists. And it's right, you want to find out what's going on. You want to see what you can do to help, where you can plug some gaps, where, you need some expertise. If you want to make some referrals around medication or treatment or whatever, expertise is required. The second model that I'm familiar with is this procedural model, which is really about assessing people in order to allocate resources. So what you need is someone who knows their way around about the system, who understands how the money works, understands where the money comes from, what you can and can't apply for. Back in the UK, the welfare rights officers, they were the great people for that, because not only would they tell you about the benefits that were there, they would give you a bit of a heads up that said, if you apply for this, you can also apply for that. The social security people were only able to tell you strictly the letter of the law. So a good procedural assessment, someone who can tell you what's what, where to get what you need, really, really valuable. But I don't think that either of these two modes of assessment are the places where we stay in terms of person-centred assessment. We're much more in what Jerry Smale described as the exchange model. And in the exchange model, what we're saying is, I might know something about how the system works, but you know about yourself and your life and your family, and you know the impact that this situation or condition has on you. So let's work on this together. Let's exchange our ideas and our information. Let's start from the position where neither of us is the expert. Neither of us has all of the power and control, and each of us will slide in and out of being in charge as the situation requires. It's a shared model. Absolutely person-centred. Sit down, tell me about yourself. Let's see what we can figure out together to help you live the kind of life that you want to live. What will it take for that to happen? So in that exchange model, that's where we sit. And one of the things that's important, I think, about the exchange model is this idea of the sort of sharing and the balance of power. In the expert model, it will feel like the expert's in charge. Well, the expert will be in charge. They'll say, here's what's going to happen next. This is what you'll do. You might have some options about whether or not you take the medicine or follow the prescription, but they're saying this is how it should be. In the procedural model, somebody's got some information, and information and knowledge are power. You know, they can help you get access to something or not. So they stay in the power rests with them. In the exchange model, there's a balance of it. If you imagine those old balancing scales, where sometimes you as the worker will be the person who might need to give some direction and take some control and guide. But most of the time, the person is stepping into that spot themselves. Okay? So that's the territory that I think we're in when we're talking about person-centred working. I am old enough to remember what it was like when no one knew anything about person-centred planning. I could go to meetings and talk about person-centred work, person-centred planning, and no one would have a blind idea of what I was on about. Nowadays, I go to meetings and everybody knows about it, everyone does it, everyone's great at it, everyone's got the T-shirt. And in fact, everyone's thought of another way to change it and make it even better. And I'm a bit over that, actually, because I'm back to my original point that I don't think that anyone, in fact, I don't know of any place where anyone has really figured out this whole business of person-centred working. And indeed, how could we? Because by very definition, person-centred working means that you're doing something different for everyone. You're looking at this person who's sitting in front of you and you're thinking about what it would take for them to live well. And that will change in lots of situations with lots of people. There will be different answers to that question. You can't standardise that way of working. You can't roll it out and apply it everywhere. You can't come up with one form that will answer all of the questions that you ever need to ask about anyone ever in their life. It can't be done. It is a process of learning. It is essentially about building a relationship with a person. And from that relationship, figuring out where you're going, where are we going next, what's going to be helpful in this situation. So I'm at the point at which I'm really tired of smiling and nodding when people tell me about how person-centred their organisation is. And then they tell me that what they do is they maintain, aged care homes that have 120 people living in them, and they have a dementia unit that has 25 people living in it. But oh yeah, we work in a person-centred way. I heard a great one last week, actually. We don't do congregate living. We have people living in a shared environment. How interesting. What magic we work with words, you know. So I'm just sick of that. And I think it's really important that to try and just say, you have to be thinking about what you're doing when you're talking about being person-centred. Are all your ducks in a row? Or are you just using those words because they happen to be the jargon that we're talking about this time? It could be something another time. So we'll come back to this. Person-centred planning, here's a definition of it. It's a constellation of tools designed to help a person or a family make a purposeful, meaningful change in their life. That was the definition described by John O'Brien, Jack Pierpoint, and Marsha Forrest, who are three of the great designers and innovators around person-centred working in the field of disability. Okay? So it's a process of change. It's about helping to make something meaningful happen in someone's life. Their other intentions were to shift the axis of power in the relationship between the person and the system. The system held all of the power. The person had very little power. So how can we shift that so that we're back to this balance? Yeah. The other stated intention of person-centred working was to give a voice to people who had no voice, who had been overlooked by the system, where the process of being ignored, shunted around, put in silos, having things done to them. I was very interested in your comment about communication, because you just made me think, yeah, where are the speech and language therapists? Why are people with dementia not getting access to some of the communication devices that have proved to be so useful for people in the disability sector who don't use words to speak? Yeah. Giving people a voice is a really fundamental thing to do. So person-centred planning, person-centred working was all about that, shifting the balance of power so it rested more with the people and their families, and giving a voice to people who were voiceless. Now, I want to break it down a wee bit, because what's happened is person-centred planning has become a sort of catch-all term. Okay, I think there are three aspects that it's worth looking at. I think there's a whole notion about being person-centred in the first place. And this is about having attitudes and values that honour a person's unique individuality and perspective and are concerned with their full inclusion. Now, the bits about this that I think are really important are this notion about not just honouring a person, well, actually, I think the notion of honouring, it's an old-fashioned word, but I think it's an important word. You know, I might not get why you like this done in this way, but I'm going to honour your choice in it. I'm going to honour the fact that you have 85 years on this earth, and I have 54. You know, you've seen more, you've done things. I'm going to be honourable and respectful around that. You know, I'm going to understand that you have a completely different experience of life than the one that I do. You've seen things, you've done things, you've been shaped by events, actually sometimes considerable historical events that have brought you to this place that you're in. So my job, to work in a person-centred way, is to honour your unique individuality and perspective, and to be concerned with your full inclusion. Now, for me, this is the absolute key about person-centred